Hello, and I'm delighted to be joined today by Maura McKibbin. Maura is a fabulous family mediator based in Altrincham in Cheshire. Hi Maura, how are you doing?
Hi Tamsin, I am very well indeed, thank you, in Family Mediation Week as well.
Indeed, although this will go out just after Family Mediation Week, so probably isn't by the time we get to launch this.
Yeah, but it's always relevant to sort of highlight all the different ways we can help families who are facing separation. So any time's good to talk about family mediation.
Absolutely. No, I totally agree. It's one of the things that I'm very keen on. So yeah, that's brilliant. So we're going to talk today about how to get the most out of mediation, and you've got some tips for us. So where are we going to start today, Maura?
I think I've got five top tips for people who are families who are going through a mediation process, couples who are going through a mediation process. The first one is investing in finding out about the process. So there are, of course, lots of different options for how you sort stuff out when a family is reorganizing life, and mediation is only one of them. But there are different ways. Of course, there's loads of material online to find out about mediation. You can book with a mediator to have what's called a MIAM, or a mediation information meeting, to talk through different options, including mediation. And also, we've just briefly discussed it before coming on air. There are things like now there are some videos to help people to just see what, a scenario where usually using actors to see what a mediation meeting might be like. So it is very valuable to take time to look at the different options and to explore them in detail with somebody that knows about them, and then matching up the scenario you have with those different process options to make sure you can find the best fit possible. So I think it is very definitely worth investing enough time to make sure you get into the process it's the best fit for you, and you can find out as much as possible about it ahead.
I think that's really good advice. Would you go and see a solicitor first, even if you thought mediation was the right solution for you, or can you go straight to a mediator and begin the process that way?
You don't have to go and see a solicitor first. So there are lots of people now who are coming straight into mediation, and the mediator will be able to either help you to find, they can give you names of a few solicitors that could help you, or you can have a solicitor lined up by recommendation when you get a bit further down the line. So I think in terms of cost effectiveness, for lots of people actually coming into mediation first, then accessing legal advice, I think the most important thing about the legal advice piece and mediation is that you link up with a solicitor who is mediation friendly, to use my term, someone that understands what you're doing in mediation, really importantly understands why it's important to you to sort things out in a way that's good for your family in separation, and that can help you and advise you with that at the forefront. So yeah, you don't have to get legal advice first. It's best practice to have legal and financial advice as you're mediating, but you can feed them in when the time is right.
Perfect. Fantastic. Okay, and tip number 2.
So tip number 2 is being emotionally ready for mediation. So becoming emotionally ready for mediation, it's not something you can suddenly just pull a wand out of a bag and wave it and you will be emotionally ready. And whether someone is emotionally ready for mediation depends on a lot of things. It depends on them, it depends on the circumstances of their separation, it depends upon their separated partner. It depends upon, importantly, where they are on their emotional recovery journey, because I think we all know that family separation touches every part of life and turns life very upside down for people, and emotionally it is phenomenally challenging to go through family separation. So for many people, there's been a lot of research into what happens to us emotionally when separation occurs. And there is a very clear path that is a bereavement process emotionally. It's exactly the same steps as bereavement. And so if someone is in the very, very early stages of a separation and they are in a stage of sort of extreme emotion, denial, extreme anger, those emotions could very well get in the way of being able to mediate. And it is possible to get support and help to become emotionally ready for mediation. So I think either somebody might have enough distance from their separation or be sufficiently emotionally recovered to be ready naturally. I think if you're not, and you can talk to your mediator about this, but if you don't feel you are, if emotion is still very overwhelming, then it could make it very difficult for you, for instance, to sit in a room, virtual or otherwise, with your separated partner and focus on planning for the future. So sometimes it's helpful to people, if emotion is running very high, not to sit in the same room together and to sit separately, and that can help. But also, and I think really importantly, it is very possible to link up with somebody that's therapeutically trained or has a coaching training that can really make a huge difference to people's ability to be emotionally ready for mediation, and do some work with you to help you to process really challenging emotions, so that when you get to mediation, you can be in the best place possible to be able to crunch all the detail of your life that needs reorganization, whether it's parenting planning or financial separation. So I think emotional readiness for mediation, choosing your time to mediate, getting support to help you to be there, that would be another of my tips, really.
And that's an excellent point and an excellent tip. It's quite often the case where one person's emotionally ready and the other one isn't, and perhaps the one who isn't emotionally ready is being pushed by the other to get a move on and get the process done and get started. What would your comment be on that?
I think if you're working with a mediator, so if you get into mediation, so I think that scenario is very common, more common than we might think. I think in virtually every separation, there is one person, because they've internally processed an emotion, they've started that internalization of their emotion about separation much sooner. So for one person, they're quite a long way down the line. Potentially the other person is just getting to grips with a huge change, a huge emotional change, and separation's just been communicated to them. So it's very natural for the person ahead to feel frustrated, aggravated, impatient. I think it's very natural, because they are ready to move on. They are ready to tackle getting things sorted out. And by contrast, it's incredibly difficult for the person that's further back on the journey to be able to cope with day-to-day life, let alone think about whether they're going to be moving house, or they're going to need to find a job, whereas previously they didn't have one, or work more hours. I mean, there will always be a difference between the two. And I think from a mediation point of view, it's part of a mediator's role to gently and appropriately help people with pacing challenges. I mean, there are pacing challenges for most people. So helping the person that's getting frustrated to be able to manage their expectations, so that they have a better understanding of the fact that actually the other person is playing a huge catch up, and allowing the person that is really still struggling with high emotion to appreciate that what it feels like for the other person. So it's really difficult balance to get right. Sometimes it's appropriate to delay starting mediation. So if both people are very keen to mediate, but one person is feeling quite frustrated or impatient with the other because they feel that they're being slow about it, It is, you know, one of the options is to say, well, if it's, you have to work out what's more important. Is it more important to work in mediation for your separated family and all of the benefits that that will bring to everyone, or is it more important to do it right now? And people have to make choices around that, I think, sometimes. So, you know, if somebody feels they need to get on with it and do that now, if the other one's not ready, then mediation may not be an option. Although one other scenario people could consider would be collaborative law in those circumstances, where you can add in extra layers of support by bringing them, you don't need a mediator there, but you bring the solicitors into the process, and they have a much more emotionally supportive role in a collaborative setting, and that can really help with pacing challenges, I think, because they happen in virtually every case at some level or another.
Yeah, that's good advice. Okay, tip 3.
Tip 3 is being financially ready for mediation. So maybe we should flip roles here, Tamsin, and I should ask you how you do this bit, because you'll have a lot of insight and expertise to add here. But being financially, so for people who are tackling the reorganization of their finances, job one in any financial separation process is to create a full and transparent picture of what a separating couple look like financially, and that there isn't a way round doing that, and that needs to happen in mediation, as it happens in every other financial separation process. So that looks different for different people, and some people are very good and organized, good at organizing themselves financially pre-separation. That's been what they've been like, and for those people, getting ready financially doesn't feel like the biggest hill to climb. Although, having said that, to do that task when emotion is really challenging you can make it feel difficult, even if you are financially organized as a person. And for others, that task is overwhelmingly difficult, because they're maybe not that organized naturally financially, and on top of that, life's upside down. So how that works differs. It can be hugely helpful for a financial professional to help people to do that job, particularly if finances are a bit more complicated. You know, it can be, well, you'll give your insight into this, but that can be a very useful way for people to be able to know what to do and when, and what information to gather together, and around pensions, what on earth do you need to ask for, and how long is it going to take to arrive, and all of this stuff. So solicitors help with it too. If they're involved at the early stages, they can have a part in helping people to get ready financially, and also they can have a role in digging into a bit of the forensics of checking out the information and making sure that it all adds together properly, so that people can then be ready to start the problem solving bit. So the gathering together of financial information is all about preparation, and once you've done that role, you can start to problem solve in mediation. So yeah, so I think that's probably what I mean by making sure you're financially ready to mediate. But I am all ears, Tamsin, because I know you'll have stuff to add here.
Yeah, I'm in complete agreement with everything you've said. I think certainly there can be some frustration around the amount of time that it takes to gather this information up. Requesting valuations and information from pension providers can be slow, to put it mildly. Pension providers quite often ignore the fact that you write divorce in the letter and might send you completely the wrong information. Certainly if you're working with government departments such as the NHS pension or the university's pension or a local authority pension, quite often these are taking, I mean, it's 6 weeks normally, but at the current moment, while we're all struggling with working from home and COVID and so on, it's certainly taking much longer than that. But yeah, I think it's really important to gather together your information, and also not to necessarily take everything as it states on the form. You may have a valuation on the letter that comes to you that's not necessarily the figure that's going to be used when you come to mediation. So again, it's important, I think, to, if you have got any complexities, if you've got a number of pensions and you don't really know what they mean, then yeah, taking some advice from a financial professional is certainly a very valuable step. And the same goes for creating a budget. We're looking at what your future expenditure is going to look like. And if you've never done that before, and you're not the person who's paid bills before, and you don't have that knowledge and experience of creating an expenditure budget, speak to somebody who can help you. I think that's going to be really valuable, because that's a very important part of the jigsaw when you're looking at who needs what from the agreement that you end up with. So yeah, financially ready is certainly a big one.
Yeah. And the budgeting piece, because there are two sides, aren't there, to the equation. One is, what do we look like financially now? So how do we identify all our assets, and how do we value them or agree a value of them? And then that other bit, as you reference, which is, how are we going to afford life going forward? So what's this going to be like? And of course, it's critical that whatever people do to reorganize life, and in mediation, they're going to be making choices about that. No one's going to tell them how to do it. That whatever you choose as your financial solution is realistic financially, will work on the maths, and will have endurance around it, i.e. it's going to work for going forward, not just for the here and now. So that budgeting exercise it is phenomenally challenging. And again, people fall into different categories. Some people can do that almost duck to water, and other people find that overwhelmingly difficult, and particularly things like COVID, at a time when I think most people are spending a lot less because life is smaller, or people are more worried about finances, trying to prepare a budget going forward, which isn't sort of COVID focused, but which is about, well, I know I'm not spending much now on that, but I will go on holiday one day, so I need to put something in my budget for that. Or so it is. And these are tools to help people to make sure that what they are working out together in mediation has legs, really has financial legs. So yeah, hugely important. And financial professionals can help with it, mediators can help with it, solicitors can help with it. So actually, you've just got to work out what's going to be the best fit. But getting help, making sure you're ready for that task and you've got the support you need to do it.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Tip 4.
Tip 4. So tip 4 is about investment in the process as it is going on, because it is really, really important to keep your energy levels up for mediation the whole way through. So when I look at the people who tend to do better in mediation, to cope better, to get earlier mediation outcomes or easier mediation outcomes for them, I would say there's a correlation between those people and all of these points, but there's particular correlation. People who, so for instance, I will say to clients, if you want to make cost-effective progress in mediation, so if you want to make good progress and you want to do it at the least cost, you need to be prepared, really prepared, and deliver on preparation for meetings. So a mediator's going to be running the process, so organizing it, making suggestions about what you need to do and when, helping you to create an action list, and coming out of every mediation process usually would have some action points. It might be going off to get some financial advice, some mortgage advice. It might be getting out the children's school timetable for the next 12 months and putting all the dates together, whatever it is. The people who really take that seriously, who really take those action points and do them, and in a timely way, they will fare better in mediation. And actually, it's important to be realistic as well about the time taken to do things. So when you're setting your action plan with the mediator at the end of one meeting, anticipating your next meeting, you'll be working out, okay, we've got 5 things that we need to do here. How long is that going to take alongside all the other life commitments that we've got? When should we meet again? When do we need to get the information into the mediator? Because they need time to look at it before the next meeting comes along. So these sorts of things are really critical to progress in mediation. And so that the energy levels for mediation need to stay high, and the investment levels need to stay high. And your mediator will help you with that, and they will help you join the dots with other professionals who will and can and do help as mediation progresses. But if one person does their prep and the other person doesn't, that first person is going to lose faith in mediation, and they're likely to drop out of mediation. And that can happen with, that can and does happen in mediation, that one person finds it easier or has got more energy for doing the prep work, or I think sometimes it's it might be in different emotional places. For one person it feels easier to sit down and get all your bank statements out and sort them all out and scan them across, and for the other person that feels completely overwhelming. So that can go back to my point of get help, get emotional support in place, get a financial professional to help you if the task feels overwhelming. Ask a mediator what you can do. If you're struggling, just say, I'm finding this really difficult, what would you suggest? So reaching out for help, but really being committed, not just at the beginning of mediation, but keeping those commitment levels high throughout the process, I think is probably my penultimate tip.
That's a good tip. I like that. Do your homework on time.
Yeah. Well, I do say to people, look, I part of my job is to manage this process. Sometimes that makes me sound a bit bossy, but the reality is that the responsibility for this process and you getting outcomes is going to fall with you. I'm here to help you, but I'm not here to do it for you. So I need, we're a team here and we all need to play our part. And I can tell you what your part should be, and I can set it all out for you, and we can set joint goals, and but if you don't do it, the risk is you're not going to get an outcome in mediation, and then you're going to feel that you've wasted money. And nobody wants people to waste money on any professional services, particularly when money can feel really tight and there's a lot of financial pressure for people. So and sometimes it is an emotional block that's causing people to struggle with staying invested at the right level in the process, but there are things that you can do about that. So reach out for help if that's happening.
Yeah, definitely. And the final tip, number 5.
My final tip is a bit of an overarching tip, and it comes back to who is the team that helps you when you're reorganizing life after separation. So this is really a tip about making sure that you have got it's something you do at the beginning, you get your team in place, and you need to keep your team in place throughout. So your financial advisor, for instance, might help you at the beginning when you're getting financially ready for mediation. They might help you with helping you to access some mortgage advice a bit later on. They might help you to look at your budgeting exercise. They might help you both to sit down with your budgets if they frankly way exceed your income, and help you to work through what you do about that, which can happen. So making sure you've got that help dripped in and you access it when you need to. Similarly with your legal advice, it's also really important, because the mediator can never give legal advice. They can just talk about the law but not advise upon it. So making sure that you do get back to your solicitor to say, we're talking about this in mediation, anything I should know, can you flag anything up for me here? So the way I join the dots with the legal advice is by generating a summary. It's a without prejudice summary, so it's just a summary of what the discussions have been in the mediation meeting. In order to, I then ask the mediation clients to share that with your lawyers after the session once you've got it, so they know what you've talked about in mediation, they know where to feed in their legal advice. They're not going to be surprised at the end when you come to them and say, oh, we've reached an agreement and we want to do this. They're not going to start trying to deliver new legal advice at the 11th hour. They will have done it as you're going along. Similarly for your financial piece, when you're anticipating that you want to pension share, your financial advisor would have tackled all the relevant questions way before you get to the point, you know, of say somebody's not going to come up at the 11th hour and say, oh, but actually we've got a really big pension sharing charge here, and that probably means we shouldn't do this, or we should. So things, you know, there won't be the unexpected if you keep those professionals in the loop. And you know, you need different people at different times, and it's a blend of advice and support and help, and getting that blend in the right proportions is really important. And you know, the professionals around you will help you with that piece. But I think that's, you know, your support team stay with you, and it's important to keep, you know, to keep them on board and get advice at the right point.
Yeah.
So that's really, it's an overarching tip, but I suppose that's my fifth tip.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think when any of us suggest bringing somebody else in, there's always that, oh, it's just going to cost more. But in the long run, if you can get things done properly up front with the right advice, in the long run, I think genuinely it'll save you money and save you all the other costs that could come from not getting things right on day one.
Yeah, absolutely right. And I think, you know, at least in a problem-solving process like mediation, the mediating parties remain far more in control of the costs. So nothing happens without their say-so, without their consent to it, without their investment in it. They will know ahead what things are going to cost. So I think generally my feedback from clients in mediation versus clients in litigation is that they feel much more in control and in charge of costs. They worry less about costs running away with them, which is a worry, I think, for litigation quite often, that they're not in charge of it, not in control of it. So yes, but I think it does cost money to separate, you know, when you access professional support. But as you say, I think it's better to acknowledge, actually, yeah, we do need to, there is a spend here that we're going to need to make, but actually that's going to help us to be in a much better place in the long run. So, you know, it is investment now for benefit later, really.
Fantastic. That's brilliant. Some great advice there. Thank you for joining me today, Maura, and hopefully we'll see you.